This video is going to cover the use of Jot tokens or JSON Web Tokens in order to unlock increased rate limits on FullStack.cash. So what's covered in this video? The first section is going to be a too long didn't read to help people get started quickly. If you already know what a Jot token is and you just want to figure out how to use it so that you can increase your rate limits with FullStack.cash, hang on, I'm going to cover that first. For those who don't know what a Jot token is, I'll cover that next, just a brief introduction, and then I'm going to give a bunch of examples of how to use the FullStack.cash Jot token. I'll give a curl example, and I'll give a REST API example. Both of these examples are language agnostic. It doesn't matter which programming language you're using. It shows how to use the Jot token in those ways, and then you can adapt it to your own programming language. For those using the Bchjs JavaScript library, I will then give an example of how to use it in there, and then finally I will give an example of using the Jot bchlib, which is an npm JavaScript library that you can put into your apps so that they can automatically fetch, validate, and renew Jot tokens as they operate, so that the only thing that you need to do as an app developer is keep your account on FullStack.cash topped up, and then the app will just work. It'll automatically manage and handle the Jot tokens as necessary over time. So, the TLDR. Sign up for an account on FullStack.cash and follow the README instructions. So let me show you what that looks like. FullStack.cash, right here it says sign up. If you want to know about the pricing, go to the pricing page, this next button, and so we allow 20 requests per minute. That's free. You can just get started using our services. You don't have to pay anything, but you'll very quickly run into rate limits. We have a $10 tier for 100 requests per minute, a $20 tier for 250, and a third tier for 600 requests per minute. And then if you need access beyond that, you can scroll to the bottom and look at our prices for isolated infrastructure, which is dedicated infrastructure just for your company and your app. So you'd go to sign up, you would put in a username and an email and a password and hit the create button, or if you already have an account, hit login. And here's my Jot token right here. I have a credit. You can get more credit by sending Bitcoin Cash to this, and then hit update credit to convert the Bitcoin Cash into US dollar equivalent credit. And then you can select the tier of the Jot token that you want, hit get API token, and it will refresh the Jot token if yours has expired. This is when this one expires. And if you already have a Jot token that has not expired yet, it will refund the amount that's left over, so that you can always get a new Jot token without worrying about wasting money. You don't have to wait until your Jot token expires to get a new one. So that's how that's the TLDR on how to get a Jot token and how do you use it? Well, if you're using, let me go to the permissionless software foundation. You're going to use the Jot token in one of two ways, either interacting with our BCH API REST API or in Bchjs. So if you're not a JavaScript programmer and you just want to access our REST API, you can go to the BCH API README, scroll down to rate limits, and there's an example here. This is what you have to put the Jot token in your header, and this is what it looks like. And here is a curl example of how to use the Jot token using curl. And if you watch this video, I'll give additional examples on how to use curl and how to make generic API calls and pass the token in correctly. If you're using Bchjs, you can also go to the README, go to the GitHub repo, go to the README, and this section on API key shows you how to instantiate Bchjs and pass in the API token, or that's explicitly, or you can implicitly pass it in by setting it to this environment variable. So that's the TLDR. If you're already comfortable with Jot tokens, you know what they are. That's all you need to know to get off to the races. The rest of this video is going to cover everything I just covered in a little more depth. So yeah, to recap on the pricing, you don't need to buy a Jot token to get started. We encourage people to prototype and play with it and have fun. You can get up to 20 requests per minute for free, but that's not enough to really do a production quality application. You'll need higher rate limits for that. And so you can find our pricing at FullStack.cash/pricing for our different tiers of rate limit access. And the purpose of having a Jot token and this rate limiting is so that everyone is using the limited resources fairly. If we do not have rate limits, then inevitably some developers will abuse the system at the cost of other developers who are legitimately trying to use the system. So by having these Jot tokens, it ensures that the platform, the scarce resource, is divvied up fairly. And that's the whole point of the Jot token. So what is a Jot token? It stands for JSON Web Token. And I call them a Jot token. Many people do as a shorthand. It's an internet standard. It's actually RFC 7519, and you can find out everything you want to know about them at JWT.io, the website. So what does it solve? Why are we using them? The main problem it solves, like I said, is its authorization when using REST API. Like as you make the REST API call, you can just pass this Jot token in, and it authorizes you to use that. And the real high-level problem it's solving is fair consumption of limited resources. So there's 4 different ways to consume this Jot token. I'm going to start with the curl example, which is totally language agnostic. I'm going to discuss using it in a REST API using the Axios JavaScript library. Now, using it in this way is language agnostic. I just have to pick some sort of library to make REST API calls, and I'm most comfortable with JavaScript, so I'm going to use Axios. But the idea behind this is transferable to any programming language that has some way to communicate with a REST API. The same sort of steps in that code is the same for every language. Then I'll show how to use it specifically in our Bchjs library, and then I'll show how to get your Jot token using the JWT BCH lib, which is an NPM JavaScript library. And the main use case for that library is that you can just put in your login name and password into an environment variable, and then this library will automatically go out and get the Jot token. It'll validate the Jot token. It'll get a new Jot token if the old Jot token expires. And basically, by using this library, when you create an app, you don't have to think about this Jot token stuff. Once you set this up, all you have to worry about is keeping a credit in your FullStack.cash account, and then this library will automatically make sure that your app has a valid Jot token to use. So all these examples that I mentioned in this slide are on GitHub, and that's what I'm going to go over right now for the rest of this video. So it's on github.com in the Permissionless Software Foundation group, and the repository is called Jot Token Examples. So I've got that pulled up here on github.com, the Permissionless Software Foundation group, and then the Jot Token Examples repository. This video is going to be linked here in the repository, and I'm also going to link to this repository in the YouTube show notes. So there's 4 examples here to walk through. Curl includes examples of interacting directly with the REST API without any assumptions about the programming language you're working with. So here's an example of curl. So if the Jot token is here, so let's start by getting a Jot token. And for this example, I created a demo account, demo@demo.com with password demo. I'm going to log in. Now this account has a credit of $20. I've already deposited some money in there. Let's just update the credit. Okay, there we go. I'm going to get a Jot token on the 100 RPM tier. So there's our new Jot token. It expires July 1st. So I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. And here I'm in the curl example. So I'm going to export the Jot token to an environment variable. So export Bchjs token equals. And then I'm pasting in the Jot token I got from FullStack.cash. And I can see it's in there. I'm on Ubuntu, but Linux, but this will work the same on a Mac, and it should work also on Windows. And if you have trouble with that, you might try the Bash shell for Windows, in which case I know it'll work in that. So there we can see that we've got the Jot token in as an environment variable. So now this is going to call the FullStack.cash API for the Bitcoin Cash blockchain. It's going to get a balance from the Electrum X indexer for this Bitcoin Cash address. And it's going to pass in the Jot token into the authorization header. So there we go. We have 1,600 Satoshis as a confirmed balance and 0 Satoshis as an unconfirmed balance. So that's how you use the curl. Curl is a really handy tool for testing REST APIs in a language agnostic way. So that's the first way to interact with it. The second way I'm going to show is just using a REST API and as language agnostic of a way as I can. So if we go into the Axios REST API example, I'm just going to move this over here. This code is in this JavaScript example, and let me walk through the code and what's going on here. So Axios is just a JavaScript library for making REST API calls. Every language is going to have some similar library to Axios for making REST API calls. And so I'm doing the exact same thing I did in the curl example. Here's the address. Here's the API URL that I'm going to be calling, and that includes the address as a parameter. And then here's the Jot token that I just got. And what it's going to do is the same thing in that curl example, pass the Jot token in as in the authorization header. And then it's going to make a get call using Axios and pass in all this information, and then it'll display the balance. So here I'm in the same repository that we were just looking at, and I'm going to run the code we were just looking at. So there it came back with the same data as the curl call. Okay, so that is an example of a language agnostic REST API call passing in the Jot token. So if you're using Bchjs to work with the Bitcoin Cash blockchain or to work with the eCash blockchain, let me show you how to instantiate Bchjs with the Jot token. This is also just following the README that's in the Bchjs repository. But basically, we are bringing in the Bchjs library, the npm package, and then we're instantiating it right here. And when we instantiate it, we're passing in the Jot token with this API token property. And this will automatically pass that into the header every time Bchjs makes a call to the REST API. And so again, there's an address, and we're calling the Electrum X indexer to look up the balance for that address. So if I run that code, we get the same result. Okay, so finally, that brings us to the Jot BCH lib, which is an NPM library you can find on npmjs.com. And there is even more extensive code examples here in the README, but there's also a whole demo repository dedicated to this with a more extensive version of the demo that I'm going to show. But the example code here in the demo for this video has similarly been simplified, and it's very similar to the Bchjs example we just looked at. We bring in the Bchjs npm library, and then we bring in the Jot bchlib npm library, and we pass in our login and password. And so this library will go get a Jot token for us. And so when we start the application, we call this register function, and that will log in and retrieve the Jot token, and then we can pull out the Jot token with this property. And there are additional functions I'm not going to show here in this demo for validating the token and getting a new token if the old token's expired, but you can explore that with some of the other links that I just mentioned. But then from here, the code's the same. We instantiate Bchjs by passing in the API token, and then we get the balance for that address. So if I go into that directory, Jot bchlib, I can run that example script. So now what you didn't see is it just went out and logged in using the login name and password. And there it is, we got the exact same output as the previous ones. Okay, so this is what we covered in the video. Did the TLDR to help you get started quickly, explained what a Jot token is and where you can go for more information if you're not familiar with them. I gave an example of how to use curl, which is language agnostic. I gave an example of how to make a language agnostic REST API call using a REST library. I showed how to instantiate Bchjs and pass in the Jot token, and then I also gave an example of how to use the Jot bchlib library to allow your app to automatically negotiate and handle Jot tokens.